Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Here's the next video for my landscape sketching series about folktale landscapes. And in this series I'm looking for landscapes that could be the background for local legends and folktales. And what I want to do is bring the atmosphere and the mood from those stories into my landscape sketches. And this time I found myself in a forest near two castle ruins, one from the 13th century and one was actually more like a settlement with archaeological findings with Stone Age and Bronze Age tools. And to be honest, I was hiking there, but the castle ruins were really not what interested me in this scene because in this picture, in this sketch, I was interested in how the light fell through the trees and the interesting shadows that ended up on the road. And in folktales, supernatural elements or spirits can linger in the shadows, and it's to me, it's as if the dark of the forest is reaching out after you. And so this was what I was interested in this scene. And as always, I'm starting with a light pencil sketch. So I'm using a hard pencil for this, and I'm just laying down the lines very, very lightly so that I can refine them or change them if I need to. And so I'm adding in the different trees, the road, and also the shadows because they play a major role in this sketch. So I'm taking my time with all of the single elements in this sketch. Taking care of these interesting patterns that the trees make. And then I noticed halfway through the preliminary sketch that my paper format was a little bit too wide, so I changed it by changing the position of the masking tape. So most of the sketches that I do for this series have the same format, and this was true for this one also. So I'm taking my time sketching in the different parts of the trees and the foliage so that I'll have an easier time adding in light and shadows later. Also adding in a little bit of these grasses in the foreground. And it was really a beautiful scene. The light playing through the leaf canopy and through these grasses. I really love these sort of light yellow but slightly reddish grasses that you can see in late summer. So this felt like a really special day and a special scene to me. I'm bringing out some parts of the drawing with a softer pencil so that the lines will be slightly darker and slightly thicker. And this way I can already bring some emphasis to some parts of the sketch to certain elements and leave others a little bit lighter. So this is very helpful for me to show what parts of the image I'm interested in and what are the ones that stand out. So now I'm ready to add watercolor, and I'm starting lightly with this light green, this almost glowing bits of foliage, and I'm adding them only in the parts where I can see the lighter green. And I like to imagine by doing this that I get clearer colors. Instead of coloring it all in with the light green and then painting over it with a darker color, which is also a possibility, and it works well for most scenes, but I wanted to try out if I can get more intense colors this way. And I'm thinking about the texture and the structure of the different elements in the picture. So what does the light look like on this road, and what does the light look like on the leaves? And this will influence how I apply the paint onto the paper. I'm adding the darker shadowy parts of the foliage with this bluish dark green. So probably just a little bit of sap green and phthalo green mixed with a bit of blue, ultramarine blue possibly. I apologize if I can't remember the exact mixes that I was using because I can't see my own palette in the video and I tend to forget these details very quickly. But if you've seen my basic sketching palette, I think I made a video about this, so you can get all of these colors with just a basic watercolor sketching palette. So this has to be a light yellow or a yellow ochre with a little bit of white mixed in, gouache white, and then I'm fading it out sort of to a darker color mixed in with a little bit of umber, so that I get a darker shadowy color in the foreground. And one pigment that I'm using here, and this is not in my standard palette, so I think it's worth mentioning, is Green Gold. This is by Winsor & Newton. I think it's also available by other brands. And I really like this. This is a golden yellowish green, and it really gives any part you paint with it, so in this case the foliage, it gives it a lovely shine and it looks like it's really glowing from the inside. So I thought this was really fitting for this scene. You can see how I'm phasing out the yellowish parts into the shadow, and I'm changing the color from this yellow over to this sort of pinkish tone and then to purple. So I want the shadow areas to be bluer, cooler than the areas where the sun hits the objects directly. And I'm always thinking, when I do these sketches, I'm always thinking about the material, about the direction of the elements, and I adjust my brushing technique accordingly. Painting in the places between the shadows. And you have to really look closely to remember what are the shadows and what are the areas on the road in between. So I'm adding a few more details with my pencil here, with my soft pencil, just because I think in the foreground of the picture it's good to have something anchoring the scene and pointing towards the part of the picture that I'm interested in. And using this technique, what I like about this is that I don't have to be too tidy when I'm painting. So I've already made my statement in pencil, and now it's sort of like coloring in the scene. I'm using a dark blue-gray here for the trees. And I'm directly continuing the trees into the shadows. So I want the same color for both structures, because that's what I saw when I was standing there, and that's what I can also see in my reference. Sometimes these two things are a little bit different, so you have to really activate your memory what the scene was like when you were standing there, if you don't paint on location. So I'm taking my time with all of the small and large tree trunks. And here and there I'm adding a few additional branches that overlap parts of the foliage. It can be helpful to mix a bigger amount of paint if you know you have to cover a lot of paper. And these trees that I'm painting right now are actually beech trees, beeches. So they're also really beautiful in autumn when the foliage changes color. So it's a really nice area to go in every season, really. So now I'm starting to add the shadows, the main star of the scene for me. I'm using a slightly diluted version of the same color that I used for the trees. So I want this harsh contrast, this really harsh effect of these geometrical forms that are interlocking each other. And by adding these dark areas, these shadow areas, I can really add contrast to the scene and really make the light parts shine too. So in order for the contrasts to play well with each other, you have to really punch in some darks, and you also have to really have some light areas. Otherwise your painting will sort of look unfinished. I'm being a bit careful in the front part there on the right, because I still want these grasses to be slightly readable. I still want this play of light and shadow to be visible there. So again, I'm thinking about the material, about the structure of the grass, and I'm adjusting my brush strokes accordingly. And I'm also adding in a few lighter shadows, so it's not all the same light quality with these shadows. You don't just slap in something dark. You have to think about where the light quality differs. And you have half shadow, you have full shadow. So really pay attention to the scene in front of you and how the light changes. So now I want to see what this looks like without the masking tape. And I'm always amazed by this step. It's really a fun step for me. And of course, I should be finished by now, but I'm still adding more details and a few additional shadowy areas for the leaves here. But I think that's fine. It will help the lighter parts of the foliage stand out better. And I'm all in favor of that. So I often like to make these last adjustments when the masking tape is off. Sometimes you can only see these things when you've removed the tape. And sometimes it's just fun to continue painting. But I think that's mainly it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you can see why I was drawn to that scene and wanted to paint it. As always, feel free to comment, like and subscribe, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!